Today's guest is David Veech. David has an extensive professional background in leadership, operational excellence, lean systems, and problem solving. He has built a solid foundation on what it takes to deliver compelling messages that provide deep, authentic inspiration that surfaces one's full potential to obliterate obstacles, accelerate innovation, and elevate performance. He is the author of two best-selling books, The C4 Process, Four Vital Steps to Better Work, and Leadersights, Creating Great Leaders Who Create Great Workplaces. He's built two successful international consulting firms from the ground up, and he has taught operations and leadership courses on the faculty at four different universities: Stetson University, the Defense Acquisition University, the University of Kentucky, and Ohio State University. Here's our guest, David Veech. All right. Well, David, we briefly touched on who you were in the intro, but can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, what you do, and how lean or continuous improvement is a part of your life?
Yeah, at this point in my life, everything I do is kind of viewed through this lens of, can you make it better? Can you make it smoother? And every morning I make coffee, right? And just the process of making a pot of coffee, I deliberately think through, what can I do to make this quicker? What can I do to shorten the amount of time between getting out of bed and getting a hot cup of coffee? So everything that I see, everything I do, everything I look through, I kind of have this automatic lens that gets set up that helps me see things that other people who show up to work every day don't actually see. Now, I don't know when I started actually developing that. I know that when I was in the Army, way back in the 80s and 90s and earlier, 100 years ago, we learned very carefully, very deliberately, to be aware of what was going on around us. But I don't think it really hit until I got into grad school and got into an operations management class with a professor that said something that just kind of drove me crazy. Okay, so he showed this chart that said, this is how a manufacturing process works. And it was a little bar chart, and it had, okay, there's a little bit of work here, and then there's a long gap of waiting and sitting, and so, and then there's a little bit more work, and then there's a long gap, and then there's a little bit more work. And he said, what we really want to do is we want to kind of compress that. And then he said, and that's really what we do in the academic world is that's all very theoretical because we don't really think it could be done in real life. I was like, what? Why not? So I've been trying to figure out how to compress that timeline for just about everything I've seen since that day in that class, just to prove this guy wrong. Now, everything else about that class was fantastic, but I learned about lean at grad school in the early 90s. When I got my last job in the Army was teaching at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in the Defense Acquisition University. And they were teaching a production and quality management course, but they didn't have anything about lean in it. And here, all these defense contractors are partnered up with the Lean Aerospace Initiative, and they're trying to find ways to improve processes. And all the government people working in all these plants don't know anything about that stuff. And of course, whenever you change anything, they freak out like, oh my God, it's the contract. And so I built this lean curriculum into all the classes for all these government employees, so they knew that watch for this stuff and see if you can help. Then I got picked up at the University of Kentucky on the faculty there, started teaching there. We left that after about 5 years and started ILS, a consulting firm. Had clients in Australia and England, all over the United States. Kept me in good frequent flyer miles. And then when in around 2008, 2009, when the economy went down the drain, we started doing a lot more pretty hardcore private equity, save the company from going to bankruptcy kind of stuff. And it was pretty brutal sometimes, but we kept like 16 companies from going into bankruptcy. But I wasn't teaching enough. It was more of this hardcore, we got to go and do the consulting, just do this and we'll fix this and all this stuff. And I love teaching. And so I started looking for other opportunities where we could teach more. And I got an offer from the Ohio State University to come and teach in the Master of Business Operational Excellence program. And I accepted that. And I've been doing that with executive ed and a little consulting on the side ever since. A couple of years ago, I really reduced my workload at Ohio State so I could spend more time with consulting clients and kind of trying to grow my business. And then of course COVID hits and everything kind of stops for a little while. So now I've just been trying to decide what I really want to do and how I really want to package it. And I've been really fortunate that I've never had to sell anything, right? I've had clients refer other clients, and I get a call when I need a client, they kind of fall in my lap. So I never really developed this wonderful skill for this hard sell. So I'm trying to make sure that the package that I'm offering can really satisfy somebody's needs. And that was kind of long, but appreciate you listening.
No, look, I appreciate everybody has a different story. I think the common thread through it all is people that are exposed to continuous improvement. If the bug really bites you, you become a teacher at heart, regardless of where you're at, whether you're consulting, whether you're an internal employee that's a leader. If you're, you have to teach others how this works. Otherwise, this doesn't work.
That is so true.
I appreciate that. So where are you on the Zoom call with us from today? Are you in Columbus or?
I live in a little town just north of Columbus called Galena.
Okay.
So Galena, Ohio, pretty much in the middle of the state. Been here for 7 years.
All right, good deal. Well, we always ask our guests on the podcast to share with us a quote or a mantra from a favorite lean leader. Can you share with us what your quote is and why you chose it?
Well, my favorite quote isn't exactly from a lean leader. My favorite quote is, it's good judgment comes from experience. And experience, well, that comes from bad judgment. And that's from A.A. Milne, who's the author of Winnie the Pooh. And it just rung true with me. I was doing a lot of studying about education and educational psychology. And it's just, it's so true. If we don't try things, if we don't experiment things and that seem at that time to be bad judgment, they might just be a failure, but we never get to the point where we can determine what really is better. So we got to try lots of things. We got to fall on our faces sometimes, fall on our butts sometimes, but as long as we keep getting up and looking at it again, how can we go wrong?
Yeah, we don't fail if we learn.
Well, failure is a stepping stone, not a stumbling block.
Exactly. Well, one of my goals for this podcast is to help other lean leaders resonate with your experiences. So you touched a bit about it in your background, but at what moment did you realize that this is what I want to do? This is what I'm meant to do as far as teaching other people lean and continuous improvement?
Well, the teaching thing hit when I was still in the Army. I was in the infantry at first, and then I got selected for the Army Acquisition Corps. And they sent me off to grad school, like I mentioned. And then after that, I had to go through contracting classes and program management classes and all these different classes. And I'd sit in these classes and I would just say to myself, this is killing me. I could teach this way better than this guy. And so I finally decided to put my money where my mouth was and start teaching. And fortunately, I turned out to be fairly okay at it. And I keep getting better all the time. But the moment that it really clicked for lean was I was in a class. I was still in the Army. I was at Wright-Patterson trying to develop this lean curriculum I mentioned. And I was in a class at the University of Kentucky that was taught by Arlie Hall. He was one of the founders of the lean program there at UK with Toyota when they built the plant back in the 80s. And he kind of pointed out that none of this stuff really matters. The thing that really matters is developing people's ability to solve problems. And the way he said it and the way he phrased it, it just like clicked. I said, that's exactly right. If we don't teach people how to think, if we don't get into that gray matter and teach people how to see what's going on and understand what's going on and figure out why it's going on, they're never going to be able to come up with better ways. So that is the key. And you can't get there unless you have absolute respect for that person's ability to think in the first place. So that's what did it for me.
I share a similar experience. I reached a point in my career where I realized that the key to this was not developing statements to tell people, but to develop those killer questions that help you understand how people are thinking or why they think that way, because that common point allows a stepping stone for progress. And you have to see things through their lens, not through your lens. And we all have our own biases that
Oh yeah.
show up with us, but you have to set those aside to make those work. And I think that I hear you when the tumblers clicked for you. The universe opens up. It's like he said something profound to you that provoked thought in you and a new way of thinking.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I know that we tend to talk about our successes and the aha moments and the great things for us, but all of us have stumbling blocks. All of us have pitfalls and mistakes. Can you share with us kind of the story about what you consider your biggest career setback with lean or continuous improvement and what you learned from it?
You know, I've been asked this before, and I give this a lot of thought, and I try to think through all the different clients that I've had and all the different work that we've done. And I can't really say that anything we've done was a real failure. I can say that there were clients that we've had who opted not to follow what we were teaching them, and therefore they didn't get as much of a benefit as they could have. And then there have been other clients who maybe bring in a new boss, and the new boss wants to do something else, and the lean effort immediately stops, and we don't get to see it through. And I really regret not being able to see those things through. And I had two clients that kind of dropped off all of a sudden at COVID. We were in the middle of some pretty good things. And because of the changes they had to make in their operations during the pandemic, they haven't come back yet. And I'm like, I'm staying in touch with them, trying to talk to them. It's like, I got to know where you guys are going with this stuff, because there's still a whole lot. I guess I've been, like I said, very, very fortunate about lots of things, but we haven't like tried something that was a catastrophic failure. Almost everything we've done, I felt really good after we were finished.
So I know it's easy when you're an external consultant that when things aren't going the right way, that you could just say, "All right, say la vie, we're gonna part ways." What advice would you give to somebody who's maybe an internal employee that's suffering that frustration?
Don't give up. Do what you can with the stuff that you can control, and you can control way more than you think you do.
That's great advice.
Everybody has space, right? Everybody has space, and we can kind of keep on expanding a little bit. You know, things feed into my space, things go out from my space. I can start touching those, and if I can create a space that becomes a beacon, and other people walk by and say, "Wow, how come you're doing it that way? Everybody else is doing it some other way." And you get a chance then to put on that teacher hat and explain to them what you've done and how cool it is to go through. So just don't give up. I will say this: if you've got leadership that doesn't show you respect and doesn't provide you opportunities to do that, and suppresses your own natural tendency to want to fix things, you probably need to find someplace else to work. And you can these days. Apparently, there's help wanted signs all over the place.
Absolutely. And there's also a need for problem solvers, because we have this new set of problems that we have to address with because of what we've all gone through in the last year and a half.
I think that's going to be the most important competitive advantage that any company can cultivate, is the ability of their workforce to see and solve problems. I think that's really the only thing that's going to be able to differentiate companies. How quickly they can do that, how quickly they can respond, how quickly they can act. I think that's going to be a big deal.
Well, David, do you have a lean or continuous improvement pet peeve or behavior that you frequently see being applied or done wrong?
My biggest pet peeve is when smart people wait for the boss to tell them what to do. They bring a problem up, and then they know better than anybody else what's causing this problem and what to do about it. But because the boss has bit their head off before or something like that, they wait for him or her to say, "Okay, we'll just do this." And then 90% of the time they're wrong, because they're out of touch with what's really going on. So I was like, why don't you just prep, do the analysis, bring to that meeting, say, here's the problem, here's what I think is causing it, and I think we got 3 different things we could do about it, A, B, or C. I think I want to try B. What do you think? And go that way. Don't wait for somebody who's out of touch. The sad part is most bosses think that's their job. Their job is to, I got this job because I'm supposed to be solving problems. No, you're not. You're supposed to be teaching people how to solve problems.
I think the thing that helped me the most in my career with success was 19 years ago. I had a manager that was extremely bright and smart, and I knew he had all the answers. And when I would go to him with a problem, he told me, unless you have a proposed solution to your problem, don't waste my time. I need you to think through this, and then let's discuss your proposed countermeasures. And I remember the first time he did that, I kind of walked out of his office with my tail tucked between my legs. I was, embarrassed and frustrated, but I think now I learned then and I grew with it, but now it's probably one of the greatest gifts that a leader can give you is the ability to think for yourself and then to be that sounding board that helps you work out your thoughts and remove your biases that you show up with. I think the other thing with that, go ahead.
I was going to say that partnership though with that leader is it's a partnership deal. Okay, because if you got a leader who says, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions, that's not helping me either, because I want to know when there's a problem. Even if you haven't figured it out, I want to know there's a problem there. And if you need help, I can round up some resources to get you help. We'll find the solution, but don't wait to tell me when there's a problem, because, one thing I learned clearly in the Army is bad news never gets better with age.
No, it doesn't. Well, and that's one of the things that that I was going to say, he expanded on. Come to me with everything. There are no things that you can come to me with that we can't get through together. Just come to me with everything. And then there was this, it was almost like a continuum of, these are the things that I have to decide. These are the things I expect you to decide. And then towards the middle, here are the things I'm going to decide with input from you, and here are the things that you're going to decide with input from me. But we co-own that space, I could wax poetic about him. He also was the same guy that would ask me when I talked about something. Have you talked to your peers? Are you guys messing up in harmony? Like, are you planning to do this and messing up in harmony, or are you just not talking to one another? And it forced us to develop a team approach as opposed to little individual islands of problem solvers not talking to one another.
Yeah, everybody needs a boss like that at least one time in their career. I had one boss like that too. Challenged me like no other. I hated him when I was working for him. I mean, I worked these long hours, and every time I sent him something, he'd bring it back over and it'd be dripping with red ink, and he'd sit down and tell me all the things that were wrong with it and how to redo this thing and how to rethink this. I was like, I never really realized what he was doing until his boss came down to tell me what a great job I had done, because he never took credit for anything.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was, and then after he did that, I thought I worked hard before. After that, I really poured on, because the next thing I wanted to do then was I wanted to make sure that he looked like $1 million to anybody who looked at his way. So
that's a great story. It's a testament to leadership, testament to a different style of leadership than command and control.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was in the Army too.
Yeah. I was going to say, you know that well. Right. What do you consider the most important thing that you've learned in your career journey so far?
The most important thing is that a leader only has one job, and that's to develop people. Anything else that keeps you from doing that needs to be set aside.
Great advice. What piece of advice would you have for someone that's just starting out with Lean, Six Sigma, or continuous improvement?
Read. Get your hands on all of the old stuff, all that old stuff from 88 to 95 Productivity Press, all the Ono stuff, all the Shingo stuff, everything you can get your hands on, all that old stuff, and read it and think about it for yourself. Now, there's new stuff coming out all the time, and there's great new thinking and things, but if you don't really understand the very roots, then it's hard for you to create your own rhythm that actually harmonizes all of that. So read all that old stuff, and then think.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I really appreciate about the lean and continuous improvement community is that the books and the knowledge and the thought leadership, it works in harmony. There's no one book that's better than the other. You really learn something every time you pick it up, because if
Yep.
somebody takes the time to impart their knowledge, you're gonna get something good, right?
Yeah.
For the most part. There is with anything, but I think, to your point, um, pick up the book, or put in the earpods for the Audible, and take in the learning, but then apply it and make it your own.
Yes. That's I think that's a critical piece. It's all that is foundational stuff, and it's all different from the work that you're doing. So you still have to figure out how to make these principles that are universal and everlasting, how to make those principles work in your particular environment. And that's where your thinking and your ability to collaborate with your teammates is really going to come in handy.
Well, I know that you also have the opportunity to teach some professionals that are further along in their career with lean and continuous improvement. What's maybe a piece of advice that you would have for somebody that's a little further on in their career and their development?
You're going to love this. Read. Go back and read all that old stuff again. But for experienced practitioners and experienced coaches, I would challenge you to read things that are outside of your field, that really, thump you on the side of the head. The first book that I can think of that anybody in this community should read is called Leadership and the New Science. And this is an older book by an author named Margaret Wheatley. And I was in grad school in a PhD program at the University of Kentucky right after I retired from the Army. As a matter of fact, one of my colleagues was teaching at Joachim Knuth. He assigned this book to us to read, and I started reading through it, and it was a hard read. It was difficult. She is technical. It's quantum physics. It's chaos theory. It's complexity. But she has a chapter on stability that completely reframed the way that I look at organizations. And it blows my mind. So there is a book summary that in a lot of classes that I offer to lean coaches, I have them read that. And it always comes back that it's really very difficult to read. It's very hard. But that's the whole point. If you're only getting things that reinforce your current way of thinking, you're not growing enough. So you've got to get things that really thump you on the head and make you say, that doesn't make any sense. Let me really figure this out. So read the hard stuff. Read some. I'm listening to a book right now called Your Brain at Work by David Rock. Let's see, I got it right here. I got the hard copy here after I got the audio book. Now the audio book, the guy who reads the audio book is horrible. So you got to crank the speed to like 1.3 or 1.4 and then get through it a little bit quicker. He's a whole lot better at that speed than at 1-to-1. But this is like tying everything together that I've learned about psychology and bringing it into a work scenario. And the way he presents it is it's the coolest. He's like, here, he presents it like a play. So here's the act. You're going to go through the act. And then here's the fallout from the way you did that. And here's all the science behind why that happened. And now that you're aware of that, let's run it again. So take two. And it's just very practical, very focused. I love the way it's shaping up. But there's a lot of good stuff out there.
Well, I will definitely include links to both of those books in the show notes page. I guess the last thing I would say is if you had a magic wand, and we know that magic wands don't exist, but if you had one and you could wave it at any organization that you're trying to help coach or develop, what would you typically fix first?
I would wave it toward the leaders who constantly jump to solutions and make them stop and give them the ability to ask better questions. And then I work on creating flow and make things flow through the organization. So you got to rearrange things, make work flow. Once you make work flow, then you can do things like reduce batch sizes, go to one at a time. You can balance things out. But if you don't have flow, you can't do any of that stuff.
Well, David, I appreciate you being a guest on the podcast today and taking time out of your schedule to share your thoughts, experiences, and knowledge with the podcast community. How can people connect with you if they want to learn more about what you do or if they have a question for you?
If you have a question for me, feel free to send me an email. I promise I'll respond within 24 hours, unless I'm stuck on a beach someplace, and then it might be a little bit longer. But email's going to be the best. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. My YouTube channel, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. I've got like 150 videos, and I put something up there every week or every few days. And then you can follow me on Twitter. I don't do a lot on Twitter, and I create these short videos, post them to YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Like, I try to do one every week or two a week. But really, if you've got something more direct, yeah, either send me an email or send me a text, and I'll be happy to respond.
I would encourage everyone who's listening or who's watching right now to check out the videos. They are easy to digest. They provoke thought, and some of them are fun. So, David, I appreciate everything you've given to us. Thank you for being a guest on the podcast, and thank you.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me on. It's been great. I love a good conversation.
Good deal. I want to thank David for being a guest on the podcast today. I know I got a lot of value out of the conversation, and I hope you did too. Be sure to go to the show notes page at leanleadershippodcast.com and check out the links to connect with David and to learn more about his work. I would also encourage you to check out his YouTube channel and watch the videos that he talked about in our conversation. As always, I welcome your feedback on how to improve the podcast. If you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe and leave a rating on the podcast in whatever channel you listen to us on. Thank you for listening, and until next time, seek progress over perfection.